Well, good morning. Today is Valentine's Day, February the 14th, a time when many people across the world will express words and actions of love towards someone close to their heart. How close? Well, in some instances, only time will tell. Some of you listening to this morning will do just that today. Give a card, receive a gift. Maybe you've enjoyed breakfast in bed or maybe a meal out later. Take a romantic walk or have a cosy night in. It's a positive day to celebrate the love that you share with another person. And if you're deeply in love, then these words of Dr. Seuss may be true. You know you're in love, he says, when you can't fall asleep, because reality is finally better than your dreams. Well, this last week I've been helping Jonty with his singing practice every day as he learns a new song in preparation for his singing exam that's coming up soon. It's the song from the musical Oliver called Where Is Love? But it's actually a song that's tinged with sadness. Where is love, it says? Does it fall from skies above? Is it underneath the willow tree that I've been dreaming of? Where is she who I close my eyes to see? Will I ever know the sweet hello that's meant for only me? Who can say where she may hide? Must I travel far and wide till I am beside the someone who I can mean something to? Where is love? I think for some of us, those words may express more of our feelings on Valentine's Day. A day when our hearts sing a sadder song than other people. Maybe because we still long for love that we haven't found. Or we long for a love that we have lost. And even for those of us content with being on our own, all this talk of love may still cause us to pause and reflect. Well, even though we're not in the letter of Philippians today, as we take a break from that this week, I still want to encourage us today. Encourage us because of love. God's love. A love that is for every single one of us, no matter who we are or what our circumstances are. Picking up those words from the song from Oliver, there is someone I can mean something to. And that person is God. Because God is love, we're told in 1 John chapter 4, and we therefore can find joy and contentment and hope in his love always. And the aspect of God's love that I'd love us to focus on today is his faithfulness. God's faithfulness. It's actually right there in our Old Testament reading this morning from Exodus chapter 34. The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and abounding in love and faithfulness. Do you notice there that love and faithfulness are put together? And if we just stop and think about it, then it makes sense. Because true love requires an aspect of faithfulness. They're intimately related. If we were to express words of love, but we didn't back them up with actions over time that demonstrate that love, then we'd really just be using someone else for our own ends, our own actions, abusing them even in their humanity. That's why in marriage, which is the fullest expression of love that two human beings can share, the couple make promises, vows, and then they promise to keep those promises using the words, I will. I will have and hold and love and cherish till death us do part. So if God is love, then faithfulness will be a central part of his character, of his love. Because he loves with a faithful love. And it's that faithful love that I want to encourage us to rejoice in today. Well, we see in Exodus chapter 34 how God emphasizes his faithful love. He declares that he is abounding in love and faithfulness in verse 6 of the NIV, or rich in faithful love, as the Christian Standard Bible puts it. And he goes on, maintaining love to thousands, forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. Can you see? He keeps his love. He maintains his love because his love is a faithful love. Now, in the Bible course that we're doing as a Connect group on a Tuesday night at the moment, we saw something of this faithful love in last week's session. It was in the account from Genesis chapter 15, where God formally makes his covenant with Abraham, and he promises blessing and a future nation and the security of a future land. Now, to seal such a covenant in those days, both parties would normally pass through the centre of various animals cut in half. Yes, that's a bit weird to us, but that's what they did then. And they did it to signify that it was down to both parties to keep their side of the bargain. But in this ceremony, God causes Abraham to fall into a deep sleep. And then only God passes through the animals, clearly showing that it's all on God. The keeping of the covenant is all down to him. He will keep it, no matter what we do. You see, we can rejoice that God's love for his people, his love for us, is a faithful love. It's a love that will never fail. I mentioned a few weeks back that I'm reading through the Bible again this year, using something called cover to help me to do that. And I've been struck again and again over the last 6 weeks by the faithfulness of God to his covenant because of his love. Let me just encourage you with a little Bible overview this morning. Right near the start of the Bible, when Adam and Eve mess everything up, God gives a promise that he'll sort things out by sending someone who'll crush Satan's head. And then after the flood, God reaffirms his covenant of blessing, both for his creatures and for his creation. And then with Abraham, we have an amazing promise that he will bless. He will make a great nation. He will make Abraham's name great. He will bless those who bless him, and he will bless the world through him. Great promises. And then as we read on, that's what we see happen. He reaffirms the promise through Isaac in Genesis 26, and then through Jacob in Genesis 28, and even in Joseph in Genesis 29, whose actions enable a family to survive from which God's people are born. And then, of course, comes the Exodus, the great rescue from Egypt, and then the giving of the covenant through Moses, which we see as we read on that God keeps again and again and again, despite all his people's complaining, rebellion, and sin, both when they're in the desert and even when they live in the promised land. Yet despite their rebellion, resulting in being exiled in a foreign land, even there, God remains faithful in his love. He actually forecasts such a time in Leviticus chapter 26, where we read these words. If, even then, they confess their sin and their hearts are humbled, then God says, I will remember my covenant. Remember it with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will not break my covenant with them, because I am the Lord, their God. Oh, we see the faithful love of God throughout the pages of the Old Testament. And of course, we see it most perfectly in the New, in the person of Jesus. Jesus was faithful, wasn't he? The faithful Son of God, where Israel in the Old Testament had been God's unfaithful son. That's actually the main point that comes out of the temptations of Jesus at the start of his ministry. And it's something the writer to the Hebrews in chapter 3 picks up when he says, Christ is the faithful Son over God's house. Yet as well as being faithful, Jesus is obedient to his Father, faithful to his mission, to become a man who'd die on a cross, as we heard in those words from Philippians 2 weeks ago. Let me read them again, verses 6 to 8. Who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage, but rather he made himself nothing, by taking the very nature of a servant and being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Through the obedience and the faithfulness of Jesus, we actually see God himself, the Trinity, is faithful. Faithful to his covenant, faithful to promises made thousands of years before. Because we see sin is dealt with as Satan is crushed, as Genesis 3 promised. We see that death is defeated. And we see that glorious life comes as he brings blessing for the world. Romans 5 tells us that the one man Jesus reverses all that went wrong through the one man Adam. And Jesus himself explains that he's the Passover lamb who brings true liberation and freedom that the Exodus merely pointed to. And the writer to Hebrews in chapter 10 describes it so beautifully as he picks up the whole image of the Old Testament temple and the sacrificial system fulfilled in Jesus. He says this: "Therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain, that is his body, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess, for he who promised is faithful." Well, as I was preparing this talk, I couldn't get words from Lamentations chapter 3 out of my head that were in a song I used to sing when I was much younger. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. New every morning. Great is thy faithfulness, O Lord. Great is thy faithfulness. I pray that we may rejoice today in the faithful love of God. It's a love that saves us, a love that redeems us, a love that renews us. We need to remember we're so privileged to be children of God. His presence with us right now. Never will he leave us. Never will he forsake us. So what do we do? Well, I've got 3 things today. First, for us just to be thankful. For us to be encouraged and to rejoice in the love of God for us today. This Valentine's Day, let's rejoice, for his love surpasses everything. Second, if you're married and listening to this, why not revisit the promises that you made on your wedding day? I wonder, where might you need to be reminded to be faithful in love to your wife or husband today? Maybe it's in the area of forgiveness, or cherishing, or valuing, or in your speech, or in a specific action. And if in doubt, why not just ask your spouse? I'm sure they'll have 1 or 2 ideas for you. But third, if you're not married today, can I encourage you to take those words from 1 John 4 in our second reading? Since God so loved us, we ought to love one another. And maybe think how those words apply to your really good friends. Where might you need to be a faithful friend at the moment? Where do you need a faithful friend at the moment? Who might you need to reconnect with so you could do that? Does a friend just need you there at the moment, showing faithful love? Or maybe do you need to ask a friend to be there for you, faithfully, at the moment? However we apply this truth today, in response to the faithful love of God, how can we be faithful today, on this Valentine's Day? Thank you for listening. Well, if you've been listening to this talk as part of a house church, then there are just 2 questions to think about today as a group. I've put deliberately less questions to think of together because some of the application is more personal and individual. And so if your discussion ends up being a bit shorter, then why not use the time to actually reflect individually on how you could either be the best faithful friend you could, or how you can love your spouse more faithfully today. Have a good discussion.